Yo, what is up everybody? It's Jay the Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today for the first time on this channel, we are going to be doing a narrative analysis review reaction video. Several of you guys have requested that I react to this specific content creator, so shout out to you guys for that, because when you guys ask, I shall deliver. This is by Totally Not Mark, as you can tell the title, and this is 100% Blind Naruto Review Part 1, Prologue, The Land of Waves, right? So this is a several part series from my understanding, and Mark goes down the path of narrative analysis for each major arc of the narrative and gives his thoughts and critiques, I'm assuming, on the Naruto narrative. So like I said, many of you guys requested this and it piqued my interest, right? With me being an individual that's been studying and reading Naruto for years, while conversely Mark in this video, during this point in time when I'm filming this video, was someone who never read Naruto and probably is not familiar with the power scaling system nor the narrative. So I thought it'd be interesting myself, like you guys, to react to this and see what his thoughts are and give my thoughts on his thoughts and on the narrative as we go through the video. Now, these are on the longer side, so if you guys do enjoy, get this video to 35 plus likes and I'll continue to delve on this journey alongside Mark and with you guys, of course, down this path of narrative analysis. And if you guys show me that you guys enjoy this reaction and this content, we'll go through the entire review that Mark does, which is about 12 or 13 parts, I believe. But before we begin, and I was really appreciate it, hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, man, you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button, because once you do, become part of the family forever. Let's not waste any more time, screen. Let's see what Mark thinks of Naruto.
This video is sponsored by Raycon. Having grown up in Ireland in the late 1990s and early 2000s, shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Sailor Moon, and of course Dragon Ball were widely available and accessible. And since then, I've made it my mission to catch up on all the most iconic stories I missed growing up. One Piece, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Hunter x Hunter, and Attack on Titan. All brilliant stories in their own rights, but before I ever heard of One Piece, and long before I ever turned on that first episode of Attack on Titan, I heard whispers of a certain show. A story that was making noise across the pond in the US, one that cast a shadow so large it managed to stretch all the way from Japan to my home. Where I grew up, we never got Naruto, so let's see if I missed anything good.
Alright. I'm gonna skip this because I don't know how many copyright.
Detractors. Sounded very much like Dragon Ball to me, so while picking that first volume from my shelf, I was filled with a giddy enthusiasm I hadn't felt in years. Finally, after all this time, I was reading Naruto. And I liked these opening chapters, but I didn't love them. In fact, I found them to be a little unfocused, if that makes sense at all. But don't worry, this video has a happy ending, so sit tight. For me, first impressions are important because you only get one chance to make them. In that same vein, the first paragraph of your novel, or the first chapter of your manga in this case, needs to perform a host of different tricks not only to hold your attention, but to also introduce you to the main character and the wider world the story is set in. And of course, there are different ways to go about performing this narrative somersault. One Piece took an approach adequately representative of what would later be recognized as Oda's style, a comprehensive and intensely powerful character-driven story built on the back of Luffy's ambition. Hajime Isayama's Attack on Titan 2, I think, had a near-perfect first impression on the audience it was trying to reach, establishing its nail-biting premise, the motivations of the main characters, and giving us a taste of the wider world's politically driven infrastructure. I knew I was in for an action-packed political drama the likes of which I would never forget. So yeah, first impressions are important. They're what dictate whether or not many people will give a story their attention in the future, particularly when it comes to manga. They're released one chapter at a time after all. It's not like a movie or a book where the rest is right there for you to digest, and because of this fact, many manga begin their stories with a much longer than average first chapter to establish what they want. And given that Naruto is still one of the most successful mangas to ever be released, I was surprised by its introduction. The pacing felt fast, almost too fast. I will say though that it did a decent job at establishing the heartbeat of Naruto's journey, with him effectively being the outcast of his community. Armed only with a burning desire to become the next Hokage, I enjoyed that aspect of it. Seeing Naruto struggle with his lessons felt appropriate, hearing about his dream felt intimate, and the success he finds at the end felt adequately cathartic for a first chapter, helped enormously by Kishimoto's fantastic artistic abilities. I mean, that 2-page spread of the one-time screw-up Naruto performing a fantastic clone technique was
legitimately
given pride
iconic.
of place,
Yes.
and rightfully so. I can still picture that stunning shot right now as I speak. There's plenty I've taken away from this first chapter that I liked, and it was certainly enough to encourage more reading from me, which, I mean, is sort of the only job it has, right? However, along with these impressive aspects to the opening of the story, so too did it come with some, I don't want to say negatives, but it did leave me scratching my head a little. The character of Iruka is given a lot of focus in this first chapter. I can see what Kishimoto might have been going for here, with him acting as a useful individual, close enough to share intimate moments with Naruto,
Mentor,
but far
yes.
enough away to vent candid frustrations for us as an audience to understand. Within this first chapter, he existed as a vehicle to deliver information to us about Naruto, and yet, when I finished it, I didn't feel particularly close to Naruto, but instead, Iruka himself, due to the amount of time we spent with him. Which might not be a bad thing, but certainly wasn't what I was expecting, nor was it, I think, what Kishimoto was aiming for. Furthermore, there's an enormous amount of exposition revealed in the first chapter alone. I would argue far more than is even necessary to make that hook at the end of the first chapter work. Thankfully, however, as the first few chapters drift on by, I started to feel the story catch its stride through the introduction of two crucial characters.
Alright, so I want to give my thoughts so far before he starts to discuss who I am assuming will be Sasuke and Sakura. Now, his critiques are fair, and you can't really say a critique is incorrect, as critiques are inevitably and inherently subjective. Do I agree with his critiques from my own subjective lens? No, I do not. Right, it seems he's more used to slow-paced introductions and more so protagonist-focused narrative, right? Because he points out that Iruka was sort of the voice for the reader and or viewer, voicing the information on Naruto and who he is as a character, right? Now, when I personally read it, I was quite young, but now, in hindsight, I would say I didn't mind it, but again, I'm more used to get into the action type anime, like Naruto, for example, or like Dragon Ball Z and beyond. So, again, critiques are inherently subjective. There's no way to deem one incorrect or correct for the most part, right? There are outlier critiques, so to speak, where they're so extreme, in fact, that you can deem them incorrect to a very high degree. For example, right, if someone's just trolling, for example. But I digress. I disagree with the critiques he's currently making on the first chapter of Naruto. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was more so, in my opinion, of a setup chapter for the narrative to come. Right? Naruto was in the middle of his trials and tribulations. It jumped straight into that. Right? It didn't set up this prologue in comparison to like Attack on Titan, where we see the Titans and we see Aaron's motivation right there and then. Right? With Naruto, he's in the middle already of his trials and tribulations. It's a little bit more intricate of a story. It's not necessarily a Titan trying to rip his head off and his family's head off. This is more of an intangible conflict and a more of an internal conflict within himself, with the issues that he is currently experiencing being more intangible rather than tangible physical violence, for example. He is experiencing ostracization from the leaf because of what he contains inside him, right, being the nine-tails fox, and of course his low self-esteem issues being a byproduct of the negative reception he is receiving from the leaf, right? He's battling that, and he's battling his own inner demons, no pun intended, when it comes to what he thinks of himself, right? He's in this sort of teeter-totter moment where he could either end up evil or good, right? That's why a lot of people theorize that Naruto could have very well ended on the evil side of things, right? He had every sort of prerequisite met to do that. No one cared for him. Even Iruka had his doubts, right? Especially when he even considered killing Naruto during the moment we all know, the infamous moment. So he had every reason to turn the other cheek and become, in fact, evil. But why we revere and appeal to Naruto is because he overcame that through sheer will and determination, right? During the moments of trials and tribulations, such as Mizuki, right, attacking his sensei and attacking him, he decided that his willpower will overcome these trials and tribulations, right? And Mark is more so fixating on the fact that we're not directly getting into this sort of prologue that explains blatantly what his trials and tribulations are, and that Iruka is more so the voice rather than Naruto. It's a fair critique, but again, it's all subjective, and I just give my thoughts on the first chapters of Naruto. But let's continue on.
Immediately liked Sasuke. Not only did I find him well conceived and conveyed through these introductory chapters, but I also found him to be exactly what this story needed. A rival character. A rival character, while having his own goals that often conflict with the main character, exists primarily to highlight the significant differences between himself and the main character, in this case, Naruto. By being a prodigy, top of his class, and sought after by Sakura, Sasuke represents everything that Naruto isn't and what he yearns to be. And in being such, also facilitates terrific contrasts that highlight Naruto's greatest attributes: his unflinching desire to never give up and his roaring passion to achieve his goal, to become the greatest Hokage that ever lived. While a character like Sasuke is nowadays, for lack of a better term, cliche, I am a firm believer that oftentimes creative choices become cliches for a reason, because they work. He comes across as dark, serious, and single-minded in his one existing goal: to kill a specific individual that wronged his family in the past. Which is great, as it not only gives him a want or desire different from the others, but it's also perfectly emblematic of his no-nonsense personality and embellishes his already strong contrast with Naruto's much more light-hearted persona, helping us to better appreciate Naruto's strengths while highlighting his weaknesses, the latter of which developing into an aspect of the story that drives so much of who Naruto is as a character. In essence, I see Sasuke as the perfect foil for Naruto in this story, all of which can be observed after our introduction to another character in Sakura. This one was interesting, and while yes, in a fun way,
I wonder what his thoughts are on her.
Going into this, given the time this story was released, I was relieved to see that Sakura wasn't being used for fan service. If you like that sort of thing, more power to you, but it's never been for me. In the same way I don't like mindless action, I similarly don't care much for mindless over-sexualized characters, male or female. My favorite aspect of her character is how effective she can be as a comic relief. Oftentimes, she's shown with massively over-exaggerated expressions of anger and joy, which I thought added some variety to the mix. Furthermore, from a narrative mechanical front, if we lift the hood on this metaphorical narrative car, we can see that she's clearly and currently depicted as less of a character and more of a mechanism to bolster Naruto and Sasuke's respective roles and encounters, which from a utilitarian perspective is not only fine, but exactly what Kishimoto was looking for. She is a supporting character to Naruto and Sasuke, and without her, these two would have very little reason to interact with each other at all, thus making her instrumental not only in making Sasuke effective in his role, but also by extension responsible for making the main character Naruto shine. She is, for all intents and purposes, the catalyst that makes all the magic happen between them in the beginning. Take, for example, Naruto and Sasuke's first ever interaction in the manga. Very early on, there's an unrequited love triangle established between Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke. Naruto is interested in Sakura, Sakura hates Naruto but loves Sasuke, and Sasuke loves vengeance. But my point is that without Sakura acting as a connective tissue, so to speak, between Naruto and Sasuke, Naruto would never have grown a jealousy for the attention Sasuke is receiving from Sakura, and therefore, this would never have happened. And what a shame that would be. I don't want to live in a world where this scene doesn't exist. This was the first moment in the manga that made me burst out laughing, and to be honest, mangas don't do that often for me. So she's a great tool for comedic hijinks too, which I appreciate, but to be clear, her primary directive, at least in these early chapters, is to facilitate this narrative sleight of hand time and again throughout this arc. And it works in both directions. However, this doesn't excuse one glaring flaw I've noticed, and it's probably one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to character writing. She exists to serve other characters and little else. Her existing goals are selfish, certainly, but the fact that I would have zero idea what sort of person she'd be like if I were to remove Naruto and Sasuke from the equation really serves to highlight my point at this stage of the story. I mean, there's a scene where these three kids get to introduce themselves to each other, a terrific mechanism for us as an audience to get to know them better. Naruto's intro is quirky and fun with a fiery ambition clearly present. Sasuke's is appropriately dark and serious. But Sakura's is literally her saying that she loves Sasuke and hates Naruto. that's it. Funnily enough, she's about to start talking about her other hobbies when Kishimoto decides that that's a good time to cut to Kakashi, making note that she seems to care more about love than ninjutsu. Which brings me to my main contention with her as a character. Her very presence sort of devalues the entire social structure and reputation of the school Naruto struggled to gain acceptance to. At this point in the story, she barely says anything other than wondering where Sasuke is or how annoying Naruto can be. Naruto does have a large interest in her, an interest that at points in this arc drives him to make certain decisions, but he's still able to have other interests and driving forces in his life outside of that. His main motivation is to become the next Hokage, and that's awesome. Absolutely something I can get behind. But if all he wanted to do was to chase Sakura, that would be much less interesting. In short, I respect what she offers the story in terms of quality, but as a character I not only find her quite vapid, but I also found that at times her inclusion tends to devalue what it is they are trying to achieve. But perhaps it's still early days and I haven't given her a chance to fully express who she is as a character and what she really wants. To be fair, she is standing alongside two very well realized characters. And speaking of contrasts, when I picked up Volume 2, the cover brought to my attention something rather interesting from an artistic point of view. Front and center on the cover we see Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto. A fairly standard cover considering the contents of this volume concern them specifically. However, in my Hunter x Hunter review, I eventually pointed out what made Gon and Killua thoughtfully designed characters from an artistic point of view. They acted as a great inversion of colors in the manga when compared to each other. But Kishimoto takes that to the next level with these three. To complement Naruto's upbeat and fiery personality, he's given him bright, vibrant orange and yellows everywhere. For Sasuke, his dark and more stoic personality lends better to darker tones, but what makes him particularly wonderful is only seen in the full color. I mentioned that Sasuke is a wonderful rival character because he effectively contrasts and complements Naruto's personality, amplifying his effect. Well, if we look at a color wheel, we can quite clearly see what the opposite or color complement to orange is. It's blue. Sasuke dons a wonderfully dark blue getup, communicating his darker sensibilities and highlighting what he represents to the main character Naruto, a contrast. But my friends, that's not where this ends. I mentioned before that Sakura is sort of the connective tissue that brings these two into contact. In many ways, she acts as the midpoint between the two of them. Naturally, she's going to be colored red to represent her main driving motivation, love, and the word Sakura directly translated means cherry blossom, so pink is a natural inclusion here too. But one look at the color wheel again and you'll notice that pink and red are exactly halfway between orange and blue. In other words, she is right in the middle between Sasuke and Naruto. Yeah, I love stuff like this. Well done, Kishimoto. School's back, and that means many hours of painful studying for many of you. I may be long past school, but all this narrative analysis requires a lot of reading, and with my hectic schedule, it sure is nice to do things on the go. Here's how my Raycons helped me, and maybe you'll find they'll help you too. When I'm out and walking my dogs or even laying in bed at night, I'll often have academic books playing in my...
Right here, I think.
Naruto
Truth be told, by the time I reached chapter 8, I was a little tired.
Alright, so we're about halfway through the video. I definitely want to give my thoughts on Mark's thoughts on Sakura and Sasuke, and give my thoughts in general on these characters as well. Now, I basically mostly agree with Mark's analysis of Sakura. She is more rather of a support beam to uplift Naruto and Sasuke as characters, rather than a standalone, well-developed character, right? She does, like Mark said, aid the quality of the overall narrative, but her as a singular character is rather lacking, right? Her motivations are superficial. Sasuke is her motivation, with the only prioritized aspect being for her infatuation for Sasuke. Now, I also agree with Mark's conclusion that Sakura serves as a sort of intermediary lifeline for Naruto and Sasuke in a certain way. I don't agree with the claim he made that they wouldn't have any reason to interact. I do believe they do have a very, very pivotal and polarizing reason to interact, that being their rivalry. Now, what Sakura does is increase the number of situations in which Sasuke and Naruto would have to interact, because I believe she serves as a sort of tension reliever, right? Because without her, It would just be pure rivalry. It would be head to head, toe to toe, and the team probably wouldn't work as well, right? She serves as sort of a tension reliever and a comic relief as well, right? Because she holds a special place in Naruto's heart, obviously, with him being in love with her. And for Sasuke, she seems to be a nuisance, but a very harmless soul, right? So he won't go off on her the way he would on Naruto, who he sees as a rival in some way, despite him being the prodigal figure, as opposed to Naruto, who's more of a very disrespected figure currently in Konoha, right? He's still seen as a rival because of his willpower. Willpower alone can garner respect. And I do believe Kakashi and Sasuke respect Naruto because of the willpower he possesses. He's a very, very tough individual, and obviously their respect increases quite a bit after the Zabuza fight, which Mark hasn't discussed yet. But the point is, Sakura allows for more light-hearted interactions between Naruto and Sasuke, right? Because she is the tension reliever and the comic relief in the narrative. So that purpose she served very well, I might add. And despite my bias against Sakura, just like most of you, I must give her that credit at least, as far as a narrative plot device, rather than a character. As a character, she's lacking, like Mark said. She really isn't much of a character at all. She's just more of a comic relief, and I'm sure as he continues to read, he's going to come to the conclusion that she's a nuisance, just like Sasuke did, unironically. So, yeah, Sakura serves as a comic relief. Now, as far as the dichotomy, the very early dichotomy established by Kishimoto quite brilliantly between Sasuke and Naruto, here's what I really think was cleverly done, which Mark kind of touched upon as well earlier. Sasuke has tangible, antithetical traits to Naruto, right? As far as his personality and even his aesthetic, which Kishimoto did brilliantly with the color schemes. He is stoic, while Naruto is more so outgoing and more flamboyant. He is more dark and cold-hearted, while Naruto is more warm, warm-blooded, and social, right? So in those aspects, they're antithetical to each other. However, they do parallel each other in other ways, right? They're both very strong-willed, right? And they both have a fixation and an ambition on very specific goals that are not easy and grandiose, right? Naruto's is obviously becoming Hokage and being respected, while Sasuke's is revenge, right? Taking out his brother Itachi Uchiha, right? And obviously, from a blind eye like Mark, he's not aware of how tough of a goal that is, right? Obviously, Itachi is one of the epitomes of shinobi in the entire verse up until the war arc. So obviously I'm aware of that because I've read thoroughly what the narrative entails of. But the point is, in hindsight, with my perspective, I could say they both have grandiose and very difficult goals that they are very ambitious and very determined to achieve, right? So they parallel each other, but also are antithetical to each other. So there's just a beautifully established, intricately formulated dichotomy between Sasuke and Naruto that just blends perfectly, right? And then the addition of Sakura sort of being this plot device, uplifting pillar to Naruto and Sasuke just further reinforces the quite clever and beautiful dichotomy that Kishimoto established for Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke is one of the best rival anime characters of all time. He's up there with the greats like Vegeta. He really is. So far, pretty decent review by Mark, and let's continue.
Of the current format. This first third of the arc, while it did have elements I enjoyed like the schooling with Kakashi and the various challenges he presents them with, I still felt like the narrative of Naruto and most importantly what people liked and loved about it wasn't translating clearly for me. School is usually a surefire way to create instances of hijinks and conflict, but truth be told there wasn't a lot of focus given to it. The best part was the bento box challenge. Seeing Sasuke work his magic and show how much better he is than the rest was exactly the reassurance I needed to confidently press onward into the second, third, and fourth volumes. And thank God I did. I believe chapter 9 and 10 were where I went from being undecided about this story to sincerely enjoying the experience. When reading and reviewing manga became my job, I felt grateful of course, but also concerned as now a hobby, my one-time retreat, suddenly became my job. And oftentimes in this line of work, I've found psyching myself up to read a particular volume of manga to be difficult. And with the first few chapters of Naruto passing one after the other, I felt as though I might be facing another wall of manga I simply have to get through. But nothing could be further from the truth with this.
Great moment. Great moment indeed.
Chapter 9 is a glorious chapter that, while exposition heavy, also carries with it a palpable and natural rising tension. I've often said in the past that pressure, more so than conflict, gives the audience a chance to see who the characters they're following really are. And to this chapter's credit, it delivers just the right amount of exposition to build up to two payoffs in both this chapter and the next. Something that's very important to me as a reviewer is that I connect with, on some level, what the author is trying to say, and nowhere is this more crucial than with the main character. Having come to know and love the likes of Goku, Luffy, the JoJos, and numerous other wonderful characters over the span of my life, I was deeply concerned, particularly after the rocky start, that I wouldn't connect with Naruto. But I think I see more of myself in this little character than any of the others. While I love the simplicity and grit of Goku and the kind but tenacious edge to Luffy, there's something about Naruto that defines his character that I find infectious. Doubt. He will work his hands to the bone, walk the soles off his shoes, and work until he collapses to make up for what he perceives to be defects or flaws in his own approach. He recognizes that he's not the most intelligent or the most talented, and we're shown as much thanks to the character of Sasuke. And so, being faced with that reality, he only knows how to put his shoulder down and push himself. He has aspirations and he wants to prove to himself that he's more than what everyone thought he was. And in chapter 9, I learned this about him. Having been almost killed, freezing at the first sign of real danger, he's forced to contend with the fact that Sasuke was ready and he wasn't.
Yep.
And that maybe, just maybe, those naysayers from his village were right. And seeing that frustration
very
beneath
pivotal
the
moment
surface
in
of his
his story.
expression was amazing.
People overlook
to sit
how
and read
pivotal
through, particularly
that short
because
event really was.
It readied us for what was
Extremely
to come.
pivotal to his
One
career.
final thing I really enjoyed concerning Naruto as a character in these chapters was how Kishimoto decided to splice in the exposition to influence how we might feel about Naruto as a character. After stabbing his own hand in frustration and determination not to become a burden to slow people down, Kakashi notices how fast he's healing. From the beginning, the nine-tailed fox spirit trapped inside Naruto has been a source of all his longing and suffering. He's been made practically a pariah since that fateful day by everyone in his community, and now Kishimoto wants us to believe that the only thing that makes Naruto special is his nine-tailed fox spirit. If he does anything bad, then that's to be expected. He has the fox spirit after all. And if he does anything good now, then it too can be chalked down to that very spirit he's infused with. But in this chapter, when faced by the mounting pressures around him, instead of freezing like he did last time, he looks to his hand as a reminder, plants his feet, and stands up to someone that just took out his teacher. An impressive, elite-level ninja. I don't know what the prevailing narrative concerning Naruto is online, what people's feelings are towards him, but what impresses me about his character isn't the ability he was able to bring out just in time to save the day, but it's the bravery and determination he showed in the face of a situation we know he was scared to tackle. It wasn't the action that preceded it, it was the decision to take that action in the first place. And all of this was helped enormously by the artwork. It should go without saying at this point that these chapters are filled with wonderful action of numerous varieties, within which I finally felt as though I was starting to understand Kishimoto's rhythm as a layout artist. And that rhythm being, when he's at his best, he catches you off guard. He sets something up only for it to be observed by the elite ninjas, and for them to reverse it on us again and again and again. It's a wonderfully quirky style of paneling that infuses wonderfully with the very concept and theme of the story being told. I've said this before, but I love these types of visually interesting and conceptually simple training exercises or challenges for characters. Stuff like Snake Way, moving a boulder, climbing a tower, or in this case, climbing a tree. Climbing the tree using chakra is a really fun and visually interesting idea for the premise of a chapter, but what I really liked about it was how as soon as Kakashi mentioned this element, the chakras, as something that if one can master, then nothing is beyond them in terms of jutsu, a panel is dedicated specifically to show us Naruto's expression, and it says everything. I can tell that to him, to have that question answered would mean a lot. The exercise in action is a nice bolstering of what I mentioned earlier about Sakura. Where Sasuke exerted too much force and Naruto too little, Sakura hit the sweet spot right in the middle and climbed the tree without the use of her
the
arms.
intermediary
In addition to this
lifeline,
being a nice visual and
physically.
narrative reminder of what she represents to the
Symbolism,
two characters in question,
beautifully
it's honestly
crafted by
nice to see her exceed in her own unique way ahead of the other two for a change. That is until one page later where Kakashi says that the pools of untapped chakra concealed within Naruto and Sasuke make Sakura's look like nothing.
That's disappointing.
Concerning Sakura, there is one scene I really enjoyed her participation in, however. With Sakura having already completed the challenge, climbing their respective trees became a head-to-head challenge with Sasuke miles ahead of Naruto. Through this, obviously, it's wonderful to see him slowly catch up. Again, not necessarily because he's more talented or a prodigy like Sasuke is, but because he was willing to ask for help and take the advice of someone like Sakura that was successful before him. Something Sasuke never thought to do. It's a small moment, but it once again made use of the two supporting characters in a clever way to amplify the desired effect of the main character, Naruto. In the beginning of this video, I was lukewarm on this story. I felt as though it was a little unfocused or unconventional, which made it difficult to latch onto and fully enjoy for me. However, slowly, chapter by chapter, scene by scene, as we advanced farther and farther into this story, I grew a fondness for this world and its characters. Unlike stories I've covered before, Naruto was different for one reason. Right from the get-go with Hunter x Hunter, it was clear to me it was a dark, dramatic, character-driven story first and foremost. The same can be said for One Piece with its strong focus on world building. Perhaps more so than any other story I've read, Luffy's adventure hinges on its world feeling alive as well as its numerous colorful characters. Attack on Titan, on the other hand, was driven by its premise early on and Dragon Ball by its comedy and action. But when it came to Naruto, I was left undecided for quite some time. I couldn't figure out what it was that made it so special to so many people. It had some terrific action, endearing comedy, an interesting world, and as I've outlined already, some nicely realized characters in the likes of Naruto, Sasuke, Kakashi, and even Sakura to some extent. However, at no point did I feel like it was balanced to favor any one area of those over the other. That was until I reached the final encounter of this arc.
Very iconic moment as well.
When it came to the closing moments of this arc, within the final chaotic battle pitting the likes of Sasuke and Haku against each other, and Kakashi and Sabuza too, it felt as though I finally began to understand what it was that Naruto was especially focused on. And I have to say, it feels rather unique to Naruto. Something I've mentioned a number of times in this video has been that of who I think Naruto is, and one of the many reasons why this scene depicting Naruto, lost in anger, strikes a chord with me is that it once again draws a distinction between who people think he is and who he actually is. It feels ominous, dark. Couple that with Kakashi making mention that he can't feel Naruto's energy, and you have for yourself something that more closely resembles a possession than a convenient chosen one type power-up moment. Erupting forth from Naruto not because he summoned it, but because he specifically didn't. Losing control of who he is for a split second, allowing that demonic spirit coiled within him to spring forth with savage and reckless intent. And what stops him in his tracks?
人は大切な何かを守りたいと思った時に本当に強くなれるものなんです。
The second that power vanishes is the moment Naruto regains his sense of self. Strangely, what I thought this scene shared some commonalities with was Avatar: The Last Airbender. Within the first few episodes, Aang's confronted with the horror that took place in his absence once he arrives back at his air temple. Faced with this shock and disarray, he loses himself to the Avatar state, thankfully brought back before he could hurt anyone by the loving embrace of Katara. In Naruto, similar to Avatar, it's being made evident that the fox spirit inside Naruto isn't him necessarily, and instead Instead, what makes Naruto who he is, similar to Aang, was his ability to control himself before he hurt someone he cared about. And this sentiment of constantly wanting to try to never give up and to control whatever you can makes itself known at numerous wonderful instances during this story, none perhaps more powerful than through Inari's flashbacks. Naruto not only feels an obligation to help people, but particularly those that he sees himself in. Perhaps because he's a good person, but also perhaps these lost toys more so because he empathizes with their situation specifically. With Haku and Inari acting as two sides of that Naruto coin in a sense. Inari thankfully had someone in Naruto to instill a positive outlook on his situation, leading to his eventual and fantastic save at the end. But on the other hand, we have someone like Haku, a character with an outlook so disastrously unfortunate and tragic that it's almost difficult to accept that he has so much in common with our main character Naruto in the first place, with his untimely and frankly harrowing end coming moments after this heart-to-heart. And through this horribly sad end to a fantastic battle, something inside my head clicked. I mentioned towards the beginning of this story that I found the start somewhat rough around the edges, unfocused and ill-defined. However, now, having completed the first arc and having gotten a taste of what this story really is all about, this story, Naruto, feels perfect as a story penned by Masashi Kishimoto. At the beginning of the very first volume I picked up, Kishimoto wrote a short paragraph thanking us for our support of his dream. Overjoyed, he wrote that this was the happiest moment of his life. Unlike Akira Toriyama, someone he admired and looked up to, Kishimoto's path to success wasn't as straightforward. Nothing seemed to come easy to him. Time and again, he'd face rejection after rejection at every corner, all in a desperate attempt to achieve his dream of one day breaking into the manga industry. It's not difficult to see the parallels he's drawn between his personal experiences and the beginning of Naruto's story. The journey of a young, unwanted orphan child tenaciously and earnestly pursuing his dreams, despite his detractors, and in no more fitting or poetic a fashion, together both Kishimoto and Naruto help each other to achieve their respective dreams. Speaking as a creative myself, one of the biggest difficulties in my professional life has been my family's initial disapproval of my vocation. But at no point could I ever see myself doing anything other than this. I love my job. Exhausting and stressful as it may be at times, I love this. And I think that's why I tend to fall in love with characters that have a strong sense of self above all else. Characters like Luffy, someone that no matter what it takes will, in an unflinching fashion, march onward towards his goal. It's inevitable. He will be the Pirate King. Or Goku, someone I found a lot of comfort in as a kid growing up. To him, nothing ever seemed insurmountable. He was never scared. And to this day, the effect this moment has had on me can be felt. Naruto, however, isn't like either of these two. He's me, you, us. He's that kid that has a chip on his shoulder, something to prove, someone that doesn't know for certain if he will achieve his dreams, but god damn it, he's gonna push himself until he cannot push himself any further. It is for that reason, among so many others, I can't help but root for Naruto when he fights for his dreams, and it's why I've developed a special fondness for Kishimoto's story. It's still no Dragon Ball, Hunter x Hunter, JoJo, and certainly not a One Piece. But it doesn't have to be. It's Naruto. It's Masashi Kishimoto pouring his heart out, and it's created something that, at least to me, feels entirely different. It's something that was unbelievably special to one person in the beginning and became special to millions around the world today. And I think, finally, I understand that feeling. And it's only the beginning. I can't wait to see where this earnest, endearing,
I'll definitely get my thoughts after this, folks. Video's almost done.
Until then,
I'm definitely getting my thoughts
I've been
after this.
Not Mark. I'll see you all next
Great video
week.
by Mark, man.
And thank you so much for watching.
The ending of this review was very well done. Alright, I think that's it. Yeah. Alright, so I certainly must give my thoughts here. So let's discuss that moment, which I believe was one of the make or break moments, one of them, for Naruto and his career as a shinobi. We had the moment with the Demon Brothers, right? The moment where he had an opportunity to prove himself, right? Not even in just his physical ability, but a chance to prove how strong his conviction is for his goals, right? And what happened? He froze, right? Fear overtook his conviction. Fear overrided his conviction. And what happened as a result? Sasuke uptook the mantle of proving himself, right? And displayed an honorable attempt to protect Naruto, Sakura, and the bridge builder, right? After it was perceived that Kakashi died. Obviously, that was a ploy by Kakashi to get the Demon Brothers after. But the point is, in that moment, Naruto was in the trenches, right? He was in a position to prove himself, not only to others, but to himself, right? And Mark questioned what made Naruto special and Naruto Uzumaki special. Honestly, I think it's relatability, right? Naruto isn't this ideal, unbreakable figure early on in the narrative. He's relatable, right? He has fears, he has doubts, he has doubters, both internally and externally. And the relatability just further appeals to the audience because in the real world, nature is volatile, life is volatile, just like Naruto is. Naruto isn't just this ideal figure, prodigal figure that gets everything he's ever wanted. He's not someone who never wavers. Right? He's not that. He's not Goku or he's not Aizen, who's a villain, but I'm saying this perfect figure that can never do any wrong. He's not Madara. He is a relatable figure, right? And that's the reason why Naruto is one of the greatest selling manga of all time, right? Because of the relatability. Now, the Demon Fox, I think, is a very, very well done creative writing decision by Kishimoto because the Demon Fox represents power, but it also represents a curse that Naruto has to live with early on in the narrative. Right? Obviously, that changes later on in the war arc when he befriends Kurama. The point is, the Nine-Tails serves as his double-edged sword in Naruto, literally and symbolically. He represents power, but he represents a curse, right? Because while it does aid him and give him physical power, it also overtakes who he is, right? It makes him more primal. It removes his humanity, right? And we saw that when he was battling Haku, right? He nearly killed Haku until the Nine-Tails power became inhibited again and he came to his senses, right? That stopped him from most likely killing Haku, right? So the Nine-Tails is a double-edged sword as well, right? And it also is just a symbol of the demons that Naruto has. The Nine-Tails parallels the more intangible demons that Naruto has, that being doubt and fear, right? Doubt and fear are inhibiting him from reaching his potential and becoming who he wants to become, right? That's what the Nine-Tails is currently doing as well, despite it giving him power, and I would say even comfort in a way, right? Because power delivers comfort. Giving to your fears delivers comfort. Why? Because you don't have to confront your fears. You no longer have to confront them. In a way, the Nine-Tails allows Naruto not having to confront his fears in a way. So there's a parallel between his fear and the Nine-Tails when you really peel the layers back and start to analyze what the Nine-Tails really represents from a thematic aspect. Right? So it's beautifully crafted by Kishimoto. So many intricate small details that you can observe and also indicate when you really study the narrative of Naruto, right? So as far as the Zabuza moment, right, and the whole Land of Wave arcs in its conclusion and climax, bonds was a very significant theme, right? Because Zabuza gave in to just how cynical the shinobi world is, right? Just how dark it is. He gave in to that, right? He gave in to that and allowed his brutality and his environment to shape him, right? He grew up in the Blood Mist village. I used to call it the Blood Mist because you had to kill your classmates and your peers to gain respect. Zabuza embraced that, right? And he perceived Haku early on as just a means to an end, right? But Naruto reminded him that he's also just a man, right? At the end of the altercation with Haku and Zabuza, right? When Haku's death took place, he told him, "Hey, you're just a man, and you just used this kid, right? You never cared for him. How could you be so heartless?" And unironically, it brought out the humanity in Zabuza, right? And Zabuza committed his last act as a noble act, right? Going to fight the criminals that hired him or whatever, right? He went on to combat them until his last dying breath as sort of a tribute to Haku in a way, as sort of a tribute. So Kishimoto wanted to illustrate to the reader that bonds are stronger than the trauma and the cynical nature of the Shinobi verse, and he makes that a common theme throughout the entire narrative, right? For most of you who have read the entire narrative, bonds are worth more than power to Kishimoto. And in a way, bonds give power in both a literal sense, such as with Kurama and Naruto later on, and in a more metaphorical and figurative sense, right? Naruto's motivations, especially later on, once he matures, is to protect, right? Is to protect the bonds and the people he has bonds with. Sakura, Konoha, etc. That fuels his ambition and also fuels his ability physically, right? So it's just a beautifully crafted narrative. It really is. The intricacies, you don't see these in many animes ever. And it's very clear that today's new gen anime have taken influence from Kishimoto. Look at, for example, Attack on Titan. Extremely intricate narrative thematically. Yes, it's not as grandiose as far as explosions and fireworks as something like Naruto or Dragon Ball, but what appeals to the reader are the thematic aspects, the relatability, the realism that's embedded in Attack on Titan, right? So I enjoyed this review by Mark. He made some very good observations. Um, I never even thought of the Kishimoto Naruto parallel. It makes sense. And like you said, Naruto catapulted Kishimoto in his career, and Kishimoto catapulted Naruto in the narrative through trials and tribulations. Right? Trials and tribulations. And going back to the moment that could have broke or made Naruto, such as the Demon Brothers. Now I always go back to this quote, right, when it comes to Naruto and even Boruto, which is current, right? Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. So, to further analyze the Demon Brothers moment, Sasuke, in comparison to Naruto, experienced more physical trauma than Naruto. Naruto experienced being ostracized, right? Being treated as a nobody, treated as garbage, even worse than a nobody, treated as garbage. Sasuke experienced a massacre at a young age in front of his very eyes, where he saw his life flash before his eyes thanks to his brother influencing him into hating him, right? So he's experienced trauma from a physical sense. Naruto didn't experience that before, right? Really, Mizuki was the closest thing, but the Nine Tails aided him, right? This time he didn't have the Nine Tails to aid him in that, at least in the beginning of the altercation. So what happened? He was in a make or break moment, but it didn't break him. In that moment, he had doubts, but he immediately allowed his conviction to override that, and he reminded himself, hey, if I want to be Hokage, I must allow these hard times to harden me, right? War hardens you, right? Tough times harden you and build your character. And that's why we revere Naruto, because the hard times made him. Not only made him, but made us appeal to him and deem him as one of the greatest anime characters of all time, and Naruto is one of the greatest manga of all time. Speaking of Boruto, there's a reason why we didn't like Boruto, because as opposed to Naruto, he didn't grow up early on in hard times. He grew up in soft times. So to us, he was a weak man, or a weak boy at the time. He was a weak entity because he grew up in soft times. He didn't have trials and tribulations, right? Overcoming garners respect. He didn't have anything to overcome. His dad was literally the strongest shinobi on earth. There is not anyone that can contend with him early on in the narrative. Now, we're starting to like Boruto. Why? Because of the plot twist, because of the hard times he has experienced, which has made him a hard man. You know, a harder, stronger man in shinobi, both physically and mentally, as far as conviction. So, Kishimoto really displays the volatility of our reality beautifully in his narrative, in his creative masterpiece that is Naruto, right? He displays the cyclical nature of reality in multiple ways, right? The hard times and hard men, and then the love and war, right? The love and hate cycle as well. He displays the volatility and illustrates it to us in a way to make us understand, right? Because in the real world, it's the same thing. If you come from hard times, you're usually tougher than someone who came from soft times, and you're more built to create soft times as opposed to someone that was from soft times. So it's all beautifully illustrated and constructed. I could talk about Naruto forever. I don't want to make this video too long, but really well done review by Mark. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Of course, like I said, if you want more of this, make sure to get this video to 35 plus likes, and I'll continue my review of Mark's review, I guess, on the Naruto narrative. But that's going to wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is Jay the Great signing out. Peace.